He's the meanest SOB I've ever seen put on a pair of skates. After about 2 weeks, I'd go in the corner and I'd take my hit, sometimes a little harder than others, and then about a second later I go, oh! And I'd look, well, here's Dad coming in to hit the guy that hit me. And I finally said, Dad, can I tell you something? He said, yeah, what's that? I said, I go in the corner and I said, I'm taking a hit. I says, I can take a hit. I says, but when you're coming in to hit the guy that hit me, I said, can you wait like a second longer? I said, because you're killing me.
He was the most polite man in the locker room, always the last to leave, always willing to sign one more autograph. But the moment someone crossed the line on the ice, Gordie Howe became something else entirely. 5 decades of professional hockey, 1,850 career points, 2,421 penalty minutes. Bobby Hull, one of the greatest players of his generation, once said it plainly: Howe was strong as an ox and meaner than a jailhouse on a Saturday night. So what actually happened to the players who forgot to show him respect? Alongside the story of Gordie Howe breaking and reshaping Lou Fontanato's face, which we covered in our first video, today's second video on Gordie Howe reveals more fascinating stories you have never heard before. John Ferguson arrived in the NHL with one job: to hurt people. Montreal Canadiens called him up from the minor leagues specifically to restore physical dominance on the ice. He was large, aggressive, and completely fearless, or so he believed. In his very first game against the Detroit Red Wings, Ferguson spotted Gordie Howe in the corner and saw an opportunity. He charged in, ripped off his gloves, and challenged the biggest name in the building to a fistfight. It was supposed to be a statement, a way to announce himself to the league. What happened next became one of the most quietly legendary moments in hockey history. Howe did not get angry. He did not charge back. Instead, he moved close, looked Ferguson directly in the eyes, and spoke in a calm, measured voice. In this league, kid, we don't really punch each other. All we do is grab each other's jerseys and push around a little. The man who would go on to become the most feared enforcer in NHL history froze on the spot. Ferguson lowered his fists and answered, "Yes, sir, Mr. Howe. Certainly, sir." Not a single punch was thrown. No penalty, no blood. Just the complete psychological collapse of a grown man who had walked in believing he could intimidate Gordie Howe, and walked away understanding exactly why nobody did that twice. By the time Gordie Howe joined the World Hockey Association in the 1970s, he was well past 50 years old. Some younger players looked at his age and made a mistake that would stay with them for the rest of their lives, in more ways than one. In one particularly tense game, a player named Denny McLean decided to use his body aggressively against Howe at center ice. He leaned in, pushed, and made it clear he had no intention of giving the older man any space or respect. Howe said nothing. He waited. On the very next puck battle, Howe spun with shocking speed and drew the edge of his stick blade cleanly across McLean's upper lip. The cut was precise, deliberate, and surgical. McLean skated off the ice and received 8 stitches to close the wound. Most players would have been furious. Most would have wanted to forget the whole thing. McLean drove home after the game, sat down, and carefully removed every single stitch from his lip himself. He placed them into a small box, sealed it, and kept it for the rest of his life as a personal treasure. A physical reminder of the night Gordie Howe personally taught him a lesson. In the world of professional hockey, being corrected by the greatest player who ever lived was not an insult. For Denny McLean, it was the closest thing to an honor he had ever received on the ice. Reggie Fleming had built his entire reputation on being the kind of player nobody wanted to fight. Across multiple NHL teams throughout his career, he was the enforcer other enforcers thought twice about. He was tough, relentless, and completely willing to bleed for a victory in any physical confrontation. So, when Fleming decided to target Gordie Howe in a preseason game, he was not looking for trouble. He was looking for a trophy. The plan was simple: take down the most respected name in hockey and let the entire league know that Reggie Fleming feared no one. He moved in aggressively, threw out a verbal challenge, and invited Howe into a direct, open fight. The fight lasted almost no time at all. Howe responded with reflexes that seemed to belong to a much younger man. His punches were powerful, accurate, and overwhelming. Fleming had no answer for any of it. Before he fully understood what was happening, the confrontation was already over. What Fleming had imagined as his defining moment became instead the story everyone told about the danger of underestimating Gordie Howe. After everything you have just seen, what do you think about him? Like the video and subscribe to support the channel. Stay with us. There is a surprising story still to come. It was only the second game of Phil Esposito's professional career. He was 21 years old, playing for the Chicago Blackhawks at Olympia Stadium in Detroit, and he was about to learn the most painful lesson of his life in the shortest amount of time imaginable. Before the third period began, Coach Billy Ray sent Esposito onto the ice alongside Bobby Hull and Reggie Fleming. Hull nudged the young forward and tilted his head toward Gordie Howe, who was standing directly across the face-off circle. "Phil," Hull said, "you've got the old man." Esposito, full of the confidence that only a 21-year-old who does not yet know what he does not know can have, replied without hesitation, "I've got him." Across the ice, Howe heard every word. He smiled quietly and said nothing. The referee dropped the puck. 6 seconds later, Esposito was flat on the ice. Howe had driven his elbow straight into the young man's face with the speed and precision of someone who had been doing exactly that for nearly 2 decades. The cut required 6 stitches to close. Esposito pulled himself up, furious, and slammed his stick against Howe's padded hip. Both men were sent to the penalty box together. Sitting there with a blood-soaked towel pressed against his nose, Esposito leaned past the guard and shouted across at Howe, "And you used to be my hero!" Howe turned slowly, locked eyes with him, and growled, "What did you just say to me, kid?" The last trace of Esposito's courage disappeared instantly. He sank back into his seat and muttered, "Nothing, sir. Nothing at all, Mr. Howe." Years later, at an all-star game, Howe explained himself. Esposito recounted the conversation in a 2016 interview. "Phil, I test every rookie when they come into the league. If you don't push back, I will ride you for the rest of your career. But you pushed back." From that night forward, Howe never touched him again. Gordie Howe was 61 years old. He had been retired for years. He was stepping onto the ice for a charity game, the kind of relaxed, low-stakes event where everyone was supposed to smile, skate, and go home happy. He lined up alongside his son Mark Howe and former player Brent Peterson against a team made up of local police officers. One young officer on the opposing side had a different idea about how the evening should go. From the opening minutes, the officer was throwing hard body checks into anyone within reach. It was aggressive, unnecessary, and completely out of place for a charity event. Howe skated calmly over and offered a quiet word of warning. "Son, this is just a charity game." The officer looked at the 61-year-old man in front of him and kept right on playing the same way. 3 minutes passed. Nothing changed. Howe stepped over the boards, crossed the ice, and found the officer in the corner. In under 3 seconds, he delivered 3 precise elbow strikes directly into the man's face. The officer's nose broke cleanly. As they wheeled him past, Howe skated alongside, looked down, and said quietly, "I tried to tell you, son. I warned you." Brent Peterson, who witnessed every moment, recalled it in a 2016 interview with straightforward admiration. Gordie was 61 years old. He simply would not allow anyone to disrespect the game. 5 decades, 2,421 penalty minutes, 1,850 points. A professional career that began at 18 and did not end until he was 52 years old. Gordie Howe lived by a single philosophy he never tried to hide. It is better to give than to receive. Legendary coach Scotty Bowman said in 2003, "If you wanted to build the perfect hockey player, you would never find anyone better than Gordie Howe." And Wayne Gretzky, the man who broke nearly every record Howe set, was always clear. There is only one number 1 in this sport, and that is Gordie Howe.